Honestly, horror games don't have much appeal to me. Stop me if you've heard this type of game before. You're some guy armed with a flashlight, some kind of weapon, exploring pitch black environments, taking down enemies with broken pathfinding. If you're lucky, the game will potentially be a finished, working product before release and not a cynical cash grab meant to exploit the core audience who doesn't know any better. Children. The whole reason I started my series, Strange Gaming, was to highlight games that excel in atmosphere, tone, the aesthetics of the unknown, and being vulnerable. All of these things usually require a lot more effort than the token contributions the horror genre is infamous for. And you can really tell when the best horror games of this generation, just remakes 20-something-year-old games with diversity hires and hacks and... Sorry, was I boring you? People ranting about the state of horror games is worn out and cliché, and I don't want to waste your time with something like that. Instead, let me pill you on something. One of the most unnerving and atmospheric games I've ever played is not only free, not only an indie project, but it's also a Mario World ROM hack that stands head and shoulders above its sister games. Amongst free mods, amongst every other game I've played with little exaggeration. The game is called The, or if you look into the game's files, Coronation Day. But first, let me set the stage. Mario World, being one of the most famous video games ever made, needs no introduction. Everyone knows everything about it because of the substantial influence it had on video games in general, so I won't talk your ear off about the secrets you can find in the levels. Mario as a franchise also needs no introduction. Everyone at least knows of him, even Tony Soprano has played Mario. What I will talk about is the game's extensive history of ROM hacking. You're likely familiar with the term Kaizo Mario, which refers to a genre of ROM hacking where someone, usually an insane Japanese man and his friends, making intentionally difficult games that put your knowledge of the game's mechanics to the absolute limits. These ROM hacks, among other genres, have a storied history of being created and passed down the early internet in the 2000s, especially on the website Super Mario World Central, which longtime viewers of the channel will recognize from some of my older videos. The website contains so many individual ROM hacks, tools, services, forums, and users connecting, discussing, and creating said hacks that it became the ultimate source of knowledge for the game and its community. Potentially the most famous example of a hack from this website is the infamous game that inspired a creepypasta to be written back in the early 2010s. The creator, anonymous to most people outside of specific circles inside the website, was able to use his impressive knowledge of the game to craft not only a creepy, atmospheric game, but several games, all of which connected to an ARG, or alternate reality game, that invited players to look deeply into the game's files to figure out what was going on. You've probably seen this image here, an image found in the files of the game that no one could truly find the origins of until earlier this year, after nearly 15 years of no answers. The creepypasta, written later by a user named Adam on the website, helped tremendously to launch the game into cult classic status amongst ROM hacks. To many, this game proved that Mario ROM hacks could be much more than simple level modifications or palette swaps, and could potentially be something bigger, something that forces you to sleuth around and question absolutely everything. You can learn more about that hack from these videos I've made on the subject, as well as others who have done the same. Mario was made and spread around the early 2010s, which makes it a pretty ancient ROM hack by comparison. But fast forward to the year of 2016, the website was hosting a contest where people submit their hacks to judgment. Someone going by the name of Underway began to cryptically post messages in the threads, attaching screenshots and GIFs with strange names, but never really explaining them. Out of the blue, a ROM hack was posted on the 5th of January, simply called The, with an apostrophe. The ROM hack was created by the previously mentioned Underway, as well as users Medic and Torchkus. As I understand it, Underway was the primary writer for the game's story, Medic was the primary programmer, and Torchkus created a custom soundtrack, though I'm sure with such a small team, they were able to help each other out from time to time. The title was nondescript, the description was cryptic, and the screenshots were strange, to say the least. It doesn't look too dissimilar to how the proper game looks, but something's missing. The map is empty. There's a strange fog that coats the Forest of Illusion. It seems unassuming and pedestrian on the surface, but the more we dig, the more macabre and haunting it all becomes. All it's left to do is to click the download button. One of the best horror experiences I've had is completely free, as long as you have an emulator. I'll leave a link to the description in the hack, as well as another video covering the ROM by longtime collaborator and sleuth KTB. Brace yourselves, ladies and gentlemen, because we're going to take a very, very deep dive. There is absolutely no way you will understand anything without watching this video through until the end. So make sure you do that. Maybe even stick around to the channel to see more deep dives into strange and obscure video games. Now, a lot of people thought in my Urban Spook video, people actually thought I stole their IP addresses when I said they did. And I'm here to say that I was totally wrong to say that. And the reality of the situation is, I was right! I still have your IP addresses! You'd better subscribe or else I'm signing you up for illicit websites! When you boot up the game on your emulator, you'll notice that the internal name is actually Coronation Day, as in the date of a monarch being officially recognized as the formal ruler of a nation. What that actually means doesn't matter at the moment, but keep it in your back pocket. Instead of a title screen, we get a scene of small Mario standing alone in a misty forest, with a grainy, static-like sound playing. Again, appears on our screen. We aren't sure if this is Mario speaking or another character, though if you hold down the right shoulder button just before the text notification, it scrolls the screen, and we see a faceless, ominous Princess Peach just off to the side, silently observing Mario for unknown reasons. The static you hear is part of the custom soundtrack, and it's called !1.spc, SPC being the sound files for the Super Nintendo console. If we use a program called SPC 7000 Player, developed by Degrade Factory, we're able to open all of the audio files included in the separate release of the soundtrack. Curiously, we're given a couple new names to dig into. The title is Name and the game tag is a jumbled sentence that means the world. Curiously, all of these tracks have been edited to be created on July 31st, 1992. Probably means nothing. We can convert all of these files into dot waves, and opening this one on a spectrogram reveals a hidden message. Start anew where the light vanishes. Hold on to this, it will come up later. Before we even start playing the game, we're given several different avenues to explore how the game's story is told and the tools required to dig in deep. You will simply not understand what is going on without a deep dive in the game's internals, and even when you do, what's going on is so abstract and non-linear and perplexing that it intrigues you to look even further. No punches were pulled during this creation, and I feel obligated to highlight the exceptional amount of effort put into every bit of this ROM hack. So far, we just have Mario and Peach in some kind of hazy forest. We have someone speaking dialogue, though they are currently unknown. The music that plays directly ties into what might be going on, that Mario, the player, us, have to simply start again. This is the beating, fleshy heart of Coronation Day. Never does it settle for a simple, easy-to-understand explanation, not even for the names of its music tracks. The clues are all laid out, but intentionally muddled so we don't know what order to put them. This is a thinking man's story that requires a lot of ROM hacking knowledge to crack open, and potentially a degree in English to decipher all its complicated symbolism, themes, and motifs. But let's actually start playing the game, shall we? Mario is alone in this forest, with no way to switch levels. Whatever level you're on doesn't have a name either. A haunting, droning track called 0.spc moans ominously and draws you into its somber melodies and dissonant strings, truly making it feel like the forest extends past the screen and has begun to permeate inside your home. The title is labeled Collection, but the game tag is a little harder to decipher. It likely translates to The Crawl. Before we even enter the level, there are still plenty more secrets to see on this map screen. We need to examine the ROM in Lunar Magic, the primary level editor used in ROM hacks, but also as a nifty feature of opening up said ROMs to explore the files. Once it's opened, we can spot some differences in the overworld. The same faceless Peach sprite is hovering above only our location, strongly implying that no matter where you move, you're always being watched. If we open the palette editor and turn off custom palettes, we're surrounded by text on all fronts. "Don't you know hacking is a sin?" is a crystal clear message that the developers fully intended for people to crack open the game looking for clues, and that they're very aware of you doing so. "He did not know," "witness," and "don't trust the voices" don't really seem to make much sense without having played the game, so I want you to hold on to the text here, perhaps write some of it down, but I especially need you to remember this sequence here. This looks like gibberish, and even knowing what it is in advance, it still kind of is. But without this cipher, we will not be able to fully understand what's going on in the world of Coronation Day. I hope this was enough setup, because we haven't even begun playing the game. But now, there's absolutely no turning back. The game starts, and we are alone in the forest. Mario is small, and his moveset is severely limited. He cannot run, and his jumps are short, which forces you to take your time and explore the location. There are no enemies, just mist surrounding the trees as you walk to the right. Alone. Nothing but your jumps and the sound of rain and thunder. Just drink in the atmosphere. The song playing is listed as number 2, or The Caller, or alternatively, The Cellar. Because of what happens later on, I think the cellar is our ticket. The more you walk, the more you notice that you might not actually be alone. We see distant peaks at a shadowy figure flying past us, resembling the princess, but something is deeply wrong. There are bones picked clean of flesh. Realistic looking bones. As real as Super Nintendo graphics can allow it to be, that is. They don't look like cartoon skeletons, this looks like the work of a wild animal on the loose. The music swells as we see the only enemy in the level devoured in front of our eyes and left as bones. As we walk, we are accosted by several message boxes, but with no clear speaker or anyone ever mentioned by name, it is a little difficult to interpret the series of events. I will read them as they come up by section. Something unique about the game is that the text is pulled from a pool and several different messages can appear in the same area with the same trigger, which encourages you to play the game multiple times. Each spot has a specific pool it pulls from, but I'll combine each section in the level for convenience. "Leave this to me. Bring me back up." Well, honey, he pulled the plug. Have you heard the good news? They made it all from scratch. Please stop. I can't breathe. Please leave. I won't mind. Is that him behind the... You really are a shadow of what you were back then. Well, every good thing has to end. I asked about it, but he didn't hear me. Ha! I'll be fine. I would check if he lost them, but his hair covers everything. They told me all about you. Bring me back up. Where did all of them go? He came way before you. This place is his home. The place they... Everything is fine. Oh, that look is precious. You'll make it big for sure. It will be tough, but you will get your second chance. Most of these passages don't make much sense, but the recurring he is mentioned in bold letters and in red. Could this refer to Mario? He's Italian, so likely quite hairy. I'll explain some of these further on, but we've got something of a wall in our progress. A black void lies past this point, like reality around it has collapsed. Once you enter, we can't turn back. Text follows us, which implies the text is visible from Mario's perspective, because it isn't a dialogue box. I believe I am the god of this forest. Are you looking for me? I am the one that... Again? We're beginning to see what's going on. Something calling itself a god, A god of the forest, Mario is inside, tormenting him, and potentially behind the island, a far cry from what Mario is used to. The lack of enemies, likely whatever happened to Peach, if that is her, mind you. Just take a look at what happened to the world. Distorted graphics and textures are crudely butchered on screen with no regard. Bones and blood fly freely through the air, all while this monstrous, hideous Peach writhes and chases you all throughout this jumbled hellscape. The horrifying track that blares at you is called 111.spc, or The Ladder. It really amplifies how horrifying of a scenario you're in. Mario can only slowly walk and avoid Peach and her little head clones. Him is displayed in flashing text all around you. The game has been so diluted of a proper Mario experience that a platforming challenge feels alien and frightening. I must empathize the challenge part, because it's quite hard to dodge Peach because you move so slowly and can't see anything and don't know what pattern she's moving in. Her patterns are about as predictable as Marasmus appearing at Ghost Fort. If any of them come even a pixel of contact with you, it's bad news. So we have to avoid her until we reach this pit we can safely escape from her. Any semblance of reality and sanity is broken down as we walk like a shadow through the valley of broken graphics. If you remove the Layer 2 graphics of this section, the words "drown her" are visible. We have more dialogue to cycle through. Get in the bag. Don't you dare touch my prey. Thank you. Here I lay. You bow to me, crook. Stay away from... Is that really me? What color is your favorite? Welcome to my forest. My lungs hurt. Please take them out. My throat is all closed up. Won't you please cut it open for me? I am the true king. We're thrown into a flashback sequence, made obvious by the mid-2000s FPS yellow filter over everything. We play as Princess Peach on her own, exploring the same forest as Mario before she came... that. There are actual enemies this time around, and you can take them out. We're accosted with more cryptic dialogue depending on our actions. Please help me. I can't stop cutting! You smell so red. What did you do? Bring me your lungs. The crop this year was horrendous, except for you. Crown her. Oh yes, now's the time. Go back and show them who you really are. If you don't squash all the enemies, you're outright told that they want all of them. But you're free not to do so. Once we continue, we finally figure out Peach's fate. The original music in the track was called The Death, which serves as a not very subtle hint as to what's happening. But the track switch that happens once you start stomping on enemies is called The Beginning, and should sound eerily familiar. Take a listen. Interesting. You really had no idea, did you? You built it. And after that, you... tried. Again? We return playing as Mario, but the forest has become coated in red mist, an ominous sign of the mysterious him. As we walk, we get some more text. Hey honey, come over here for a minute. What do you think? Isn't that color a little harsh now? No. He loves red. The game cuts to black, and we get our ending of the game. Press the right shoulder button for another secret. This is Coronation Day, the ultimate, most disturbing Mario game and ROM hack ever created. It's hard to find a starting point to explain how this hack has absolute mastery over tone and atmosphere, but let me start with the visuals. The game is proud of its origin as something to come out of a ROM hacking contest, and its developers let their talent shine by sublime usage of proper level constructions with well-paced textures and graphics, demonstrating absolute understanding of the game's files and lunar magic. Often these type of horror hacks, or .exe style games if you're familiar with the Sonic community, are you just walking into the right with Game Maker with interesting level design. The authentic level design and platforming is used intelligently to make you feel like you're playing a warped, cursed copy of Mario World, which works wonders for immersion. The custom assets are something to behold as well. The corridors of graphical murder and mutilated bodies seen all throughout the game are genuinely terrifying to see the first time around. Even more so impressive that the art matches so close to the original art style. The distinct differences between the classic Mario sprites and environments with the violence and corpses strewn about renders such a primal feeling of hopelessness. Like an object of affection from your childhood being exposed to the unforgiving, morbid reality. Being inside a spooky forest doesn't sound super engaging when you're told about it, and it doesn't look too scary when you're first playing, but every time you must re-enter this area, you feel more and more like you're being watched and recorded. Like a hunter ready to shoot you in the neck for his supper. Put yourself in Mario's shoes. You can't fight back, you can't run very far, and you can't leave. Have you ever felt like this before in your life? Felt like an animal being hunted? The music really helps tie everything together. Some tracks are demented, warped versions of classics, while others are entirely custom composed, but none of them feel out of place. The soft ambience of being alone in a forest and the pulse-pounding desperation of being chased by a possessed friend are matched with equally fitting tones and keys that tie the whole experience together. Ambience is something I find especially noteworthy because the Super Nintendo is when music in video games began to hold melodies and become more complicated and memorable. And I think a lot of people yearn for a time when music sounded like this, where the limitations were just wide enough that one could flourish, but just claustrophobic enough where innovation and clever tactics had to be employed to succeed. Above all else, the story is what deserves so much praise. It manages to strike a formidable balance between feeling like a traditional Mario story set in the same world, but introducing clashing elements of horror, violence, cannibalism, cult activity, and mind-bending monsters and ghostly locations that make you forget exactly what game you're playing and how to play it, which tears away any comfort or confidence a player might have in their abilities to play the game. You can't fight this threat. You're merely a pawn in whatever insidious game it has planned for you. The dialogue we're given is the only way to understand the game. It's cryptic and nonsensical and awful to behold in the belittling sense, but we can begin to make sense of what's going on. Mario and Peach were together in some kind of forest. Peach was on her own when someone, or perhaps multiple people, or something, was using her in some kind of ritual. The Shadow Peach and having to fall into the pit can only mean so many things, but from the sounds of it, she's been sacrificed to someone called him. Some kind of king or entity that inhabits the forest. The specific comments about the crop being terrible this year except for her implies that this him figure couldn't get any worthy people to sacrifice except for her. Peach's body seems to have been taken over by this monster, which would explain the horrible state it's in, as well as her new supernatural powers. The monster inside her has taken full control and is tormenting Mario by watching him through all possible angles, and directly chasing him out after and trying to potentially eat him, but Mario is often able to evade. We must address the elephant in the room. Who is him? We don't really see him, but clearly, he is a horrible, vicious monster that calls itself the god of the forest Mario and Peach entered. He has some kind of power or dominion over reality, potentially limited to just the forest, but still strong enough to warp it all around, and potentially manipulate time. Seeing again every time we start the game could be hinting at kind of time loop Mario is stuck in while this king, him, addressed in all bold red text, resets the clock to torment Mario. That might be a lot to take in all at once, but have faith in me when I say it only gets more complicated and darker as we progress, because I haven't been entirely truthful with you. When I said ending, I was only technically correct, but this is just one ending. We have several more to explore in any order we choose. For now, let me take you back to the section where you play as Peach. Recall the message telling you to go back to show them who you really are? Backtrack and press the select button on a bridge and we become Mario, noticeably much larger, underwater, and building some kind of house. Before you start, you have to pull up the weeds. Oh yes, that's it. Now gather wood for the walls. Oh yes, just a little bit more for the roof. Oh god, yes! Amazing work! They love it. The game freezes from here, and we've reached another ending. All it's added so far is that we're given a scene of Mario building a house, but the mysterious they are aware of him doing so. Who they are is best left a mystery until later. Let's rewind a bit further. Let's go back to being chased by the possessed Peach. What happens if you're caught by her? The game resets and we're transported back to the forest, but it seems like winter has come early. The water is frozen over, there's a blue tint over everything, and faint snowflakes are in the air. Combined with the somber music, it feels just a bit comforting, like we're given a small relief from the consistent torment and allowed to take in nature. Don't get too comfortable though. A green Peach is seen just to our left under a frozen body of water, for some reason. Continuing, the land becomes dark, and we start to see other Marios popping in and out of existence, except for this one, which seems to be negative space with the word I'm above. Running past that for now, we see more Marios and a bloody door up on a hill we can enter. The underwater cabin from the previous ending has returned, and we see the smashed, mangled corpse of Mario on the floor. Recall how the previous endings had Mario fall through the roof of his house, which implies that after the screen was cut, Mario was victim to gravity and died on impact from the floor. Entering the door, we get to walk underwater and listen to a track called The Dark. We get some more dialogue spoken from an unclear source. Oh god, who is this guy? I tried yelling at him so he would go away, but my voice was gone. We see a ghostly Mario above. Now he's just staring at me through the window above, and the game resets and sends us back to the very beginning, to the non-frozen forest. With each ending so far, we're unlocking more and more details, however scant they may be, of what happened and what's going on. Mario was responsible for building a house, which may have been his final resting place if that corpse was truly his. The ghost of Mario above might imply that it was Mario standing through the window, but whoever saw him likely wasn't Peach, because she should have recognized him, so perhaps it was someone else entirely? I think that conversation was between Mario and Peach, but who did they see? I'll reveal part of my hand and say that I think the they and them figures denoted in bold blue text throughout the game are cultists who worship the king. They're always mentioned in relation to his goals, and some kind of dialogue I believe to be the king's refers to other people, likely his followers. This would explain Peach's fate, as a sacrifice, likely drowned, carried out by this cult in the name of the king. It's curious the game resets, like it's telling us to keep replaying again and again to find other clues. I kept getting the frozen ending, but I was stuck and couldn't find more details. When I kept playing the game, I couldn't help but notice every time I passed a certain area in the frozen forest, the light would dim dramatically. Dim, like the light was vanishing? It's here where I remembered the spectrogram image from the sound that plays when you restart the game. The light vanishing part makes sense, but what does start anew entail? I replayed the game again and again, thinking I needed to reset the game at a specific spot, but then it hit me like a brick in the back of the head. Start anew. Start. The start button. Oh. I played the game again and looked for every part where the light would dim in the level and started mashing the start button. What you need to do is go to the Winter Forest section. Notice how much darker it becomes once you pass this bridge. If you press the start button, Mario will fall through, but you'll start from the beginning again. Now, remember the shadow, Mario? If we line up the sprite perfectly, it reads, the heart. I'm the heart. Go back to the bridge, break it, and... We're stuck. Mario has found his way into a realm of darkness, fire, brimstone, and isolation from God. Mario has entered hell, and there's no escaping. Try as you might, there's no escape from this area, because Mario has died and been cast into eternal damnation. The trumpets are likely being blown from angels from above, but they sound warped and horrifying to the wicked who have been cast into eternal darkness. The sound file might look like gibberish numbers, but it's actually decimal code that translates into hell, with the tag, The Rage. To eliminate all doubt where you are, we have a lot of dialogue down here to cover. The dragon can't think, it can only act. The cat was only mad when we first met, and after that I had forgot we had met at all. Poor cat. Its shadow towered in the light, horns larger than its head, sounds that weren't from this time. What a staggering sight. The cat tried to save me, for it kept taking the fish away, the fish that poisoned me. The text is almost definitely Mario's inner thoughts as he's stuck in hell, completely alone. Whatever words he may speak defined by the trumpets of angels celebrating Christ gathering the faithful to be at his seat in heaven with God. It feels disturbing to see such a clear-cut reference to real-world religion, traditions, and beliefs in a fantasy land like Nintendo, kind of like a C.S. Lewis wrote Mario. Something about the revelation of Mario being the heart, something I will explain later, and the bridge breaking caused him to go to hell, or at least played a part in it. If you try and reset the game, Mario is still stuck and unable to leave. You can't escape from this area. The only way to leave is to either have a save state in your emulator or by deleting the save file altogether, essentially erasing the reality of the game world to start over. Mario is forever stuck in hell, and we can't do anything to help. Unless, curiously, there is one piece of dialogue that is always displayed no matter how many times. The answer lies on the collection of worlds. It simply goes from front to back. Collection of worlds? Front to back? At first, I believed this to simply be an explanation for the again text, implying that each time you see it is some kind of different reality or universe, which has more of implications for the reach of the king's powers, but stay with me on this one. We know the in-game hints can be a little cheeky with wordplay from the spectrogram image. Breaking the paragraph down, what does it all mean? The collection of worlds is talking about the overworld, where Mario travels to each level and world. We can't see it normally, so we must return to the start of the video where I mentioned all those words and numbers on the overworld by opening the game in Lunar Magic. This series of numbers right here. It looks like chicken scratch, but remember what the text box said. It goes from front to back. If we read it front to back and left to right, we get O-P-E-N space D. The second line, O-O-R space. Open door. The rest of the numbers seem like gibberish, but are actually decimal numbers that translates into nothing. But if you convert that decimal code to hexadecimal, then convert the hexadecimal to plain text, we finally get a phrase. Yield all upper xanthic bodies left behind rotten anthropy. This sentence is a jumbled mess with no real meaning. But don't forget about the code cracking method. Front to back. Read each first letter in each word. Y, A, up, X, B, left, B, right, A. The Y button, A button, up on the D-pad, X button, B button, left on the D-pad, B button, right on the D-pad, and A button. These all correlate to the Super Nintendo controller layout. Now we just need to find a place to input the code. Hell seems like a good start. We're teleported to a completely white void. July 31st, 1992. The same date is listed on all the music tags. I am truly impressed by their detective skills. The evidence bestows me. This must be what it feels like to be king. And I did not need his help. Where you is he, I am the king, for he is not you. Feast upon the flowering organs, for he is king. The king, the god of the forest, is addressing us. Even though Mario seems to have found a way out of hell, the king seems aware that we figured out how to help him, and through incorporating and implicating ourselves on this fable, we have a target on our backs. Even the music signifies what's really going on. This droning static noise is decimal code that translates to 6, end. The open-ended nature of the title invites us to question what's going on even further. It's very nebulous, but the recurring date of July 31st, 1992 is incredibly important. It's the date listed on the music, likely the day that keeps repeating in the forest, the coronation day where the king was crowned and his reign of terror has begun. But there's still one more ending. If you stay still during the very beginning of the game, you get a unique scenario. Someone berates Mario, or the player, for refusing to play, and the game freezes. These are all the official endings of Coronation Day. We're finally getting to see the bigger picture, what's truly going on in the story, revealed in magnificently strange and unique ways. Creepypasta games often lack subtlety because of the largely young developers creating the games, but the experience of the developer trio here runs circles around how most people try and communicate their stories, regardless of how esoteric everything is. The deliberate contrast between the fantasy of Super Mario and the real threat of demonic possession, eternal damnation, and the machinations of storytelling mechanics like a potential time loop used as a vehicle that can only be communicated in the realm of video games ties a wonderful bow around the entire experience, something we are graciously allowed to experience for free because of its nature as a ROM hack of a very old game. It's a powerful example of the limitless creativity people can produce within a confined environment. There's only so many things that could be altered and changed about Mario World's code, so seeing the results and how they went from creating is just as interesting as the game's events themselves. On the topic of code alteration, there is one more thing I feel I should mention. I found this out only from the comments section of the ROM hacks page on SMW Central. Opening Lunar Magic one more time, we have to set the starting level at the 15 value. When we do that, the forest is coated in red mist. Mario's head is upside down, and enemies have been changed to resemble human hearts and other organs, as well as more mutilated versions of Peach. Our last bits of dialogue not found elsewhere in the game are left for us to interpret. That you need. Take it. Pillage my carcass. Oh my god, yes! Rip it out, I beg you! Oh, it's coming out! Oh my god, yes, it's... Wait, did it fall? The game crashes. There is a way to avoid this crash if you scroll the screen to the left and sneak your way into the pit, which leads to Mario falling on himself from the house ending. The entire level was deliberately not included and could only be accessed by modifying the game, so this part might be a glitch in something that's already non-canonical. But look at the state of Peach. Horns larger than her head, enlarged, looking depraved beyond all belief, and butchered past recognition. The king has fully embraced his vessel and taken complete control of her body, turning it into a disgusting mockery of what it once was. Coronation Day has a plethora of secrets in the game proper and in the game's files. I haven't exposed all of them because I want to dangle some interest for everyone to play this game on their own time, because it's worth doing, even so if I've showed the entire story. There are other oddities, like if you use a cheat code to play as Luigi, he appears quite shadowy on the level select screen. Here's what the special bonus level looks like. There is more to uncover through snooping around, but I'll cut it off here because there's something incredibly important I need to explain. We have all the key pieces of the story on the table, but naturally, given its ambiguous nature, the exact order of events and structure is hard to decipher, and to this day, ever since it released in 2016, there's no official answer. The developers have stayed relatively quiet about the meaning of everything, only breaking silence to mention that the Pink Forest level is an unfinished asset, and that there was apparently more they were considering to include, but chose not to for the sake of time and brevity. With no whispers of a sequel, it seems we're entirely on our own to put the pieces in the correct order. How many other games will require you to do that? To play detective with all the dialogue to even understand what's going on? For any other game, this sounds like a pretty tedious chore that would kill anyone's interest. But to see every ending, you can get that done in under an hour. It's easy to forget how long this game is because of the length of this video, but the game's very short, so asking someone to piece everything together here is a much tamer ask. Given that the game is so dialogue heavy, figuring out who is speaking and who they are referring to is crucial. I'll be covering every single piece of dialogue, determining who is speaking with the context clues and referring whom they are speaking about. This is going to be a doozy, so bear with me and be patient. I'll introduce more context as required. Let's start with the beginning area with Mario. Leave this to me. This line is extremely ambiguous. It could just mean about anything, but I'm putting all my chips on this line being spoken by Mario to Peach. Let me explain. Mario and Peach are never seen together before her possession. Peach walks alone, and Mario builds the wood cabin without her, and this line is something Mario says to Peach, confident in his ability to build the house. There are more lines suggesting this might have been what played out. The house represents something greater in terms of the king's rituals, as you'll see later. Well, honey, he pulled the plug. This one's a lot more cut and dry. The specific usage of honey and the pronoun he only means one thing. Peach is speaking to Mario and referring to the king, who she is now aware of, while he stopped doing something. Since they're not in the Mushroom Kingdom anymore and have moved into a secluded forest, it's highly implied the two got together, which makes the situation a lot more tragic. Mario seeing his wife possessed by a monster. What the plug being pulled in this situation is questionable, but I think what it means is that Peach, either aware of the king's presence or after she was possessed and just momentarily hiding it. Bring me back up. This could be anyone's line. My game theory is that this is also Peach speaking during or after her organs were harvested for her sacrifice. Have you heard the good news? Another incredibly nondescript line. I can only assume the good news is something relating to the king. Either he gets to eat people, or he has begun his reign of terror through Peach's body. I'll use this text to introduce something I've been holding on to. I believe there's a character I've yet to mention until now, who is much more aware of the cult's proceedings and the true nature of the forest, which allows him to act as something as a narrator who can speak freely, and I've elected to call him the Witness, based off the text hidden on the world map. I'll explain more about him when I explain which texts I believe he's saying and why. I kind of like to think he looks like a lunar cultist from Terraria. They made it all from scratch. This connects quite neatly with the first bit of dialogue, explaining that they, whom I believe to be worshippers or cultists of the king, have created something, either referring to the ritual they've prepared or the forest itself, or, most interestingly, perhaps they've made the king himself, somehow, if he's some kind of mechanical creature. Please stop. I can't breathe. This is either Peach complaining about being unable to breathe when her organs are being taken out, or this is Mario, cracking under the pressure of having to run away forever in this forest. Please leave. I won't mind. This could be almost anyone. Either Mario or Peach could say this in any context before the possession happens, or it could be the Witness talking to either or it's not very clear and doesn't forward our understanding past what we already know and can at least assume. Is that him behind this? Best guess this is either Peach or the Witness seeing the King of the Forest approaching. Interestingly, the censored bit isn't concealing anything in Lunar Magic, it's entirely unreadable. There are several times where something is mentioned but blurred out for unknown reasons. It could be an object or person, anything really, but has to have some deep connections to the king because we know that his mere presence seeps into reality, things tend to become corrupted and scratchy. You really are a shadow of what you were back then. Well, every good thing has to end. The you in question is almost certainly Mario, seeing as his normal gameplay abilities have been severely neutered, making him a shadow of what he could once do. If Peach is speaking, she could be insulting him before the possession during the fight that caused them to leave temporarily, or afterwards as a cruel mark from the king. If it's the witness speaking, then it's likely when he met Mario much later, which I will explain with further dialogue. I asked about it, but he didn't hear me. I think this comes from the witness, who I believe to have connections and contact with the cult, if not directly a part of it in some sense. I could explain his knowledge of the game's events, his ability to be so close to the king and speak directly with him, or at least try to. What the witness asked about can either be the house Mario built, about Peach and Mario themselves, their sacrifice plans, basically anything referring to the king. Ha, I'll be fine. This I want to say comes from Peach. When she goes out on her walk, there are still enemies on the island at this time, so she reassures Mario she can handle herself, which is really dramatically ironic because she can't. I would check if he lost them, but his hair covers everything. This likely comes from the witness questioning something about the king, potentially speaking to other cultists. Them might refer to other sacrifices, or potentially Mario and Peach temporarily evading capture. The hair is interesting because the king didn't have a lot of hair when he was possessing Peach that wasn't already on her head. Maybe he shaved? I would still find it funny if he was talking about Mario's body hair hiding something for some reason. Leave this to me. This could mean absolutely anything. Perhaps Mario said that to Peach when he said he could build the cabin by himself? It's a little bit too nebulous. Anyone could have said this for any reason. They told me all about you. I don't think this is the king speaking because it sounds a little too coherent for the simple-minded god, but the witness could make a good candidate. The other cultists might have told him about the new prey in the forest, which also means that the witness might be in contact with Mario at some point. Where did all of them go? This could either refer to the lack of enemies in the area, which either Mario or Peach could say in the beginning, or the witness saying something about the other cultists who might have potentially left when things went sour after possession. It would make sense that we don't see any of them in the game for this reason. He came way before you. This is his home. The place they... Witness dialogue explaining to Mario that they unintentionally intruded on the king's territory, who claims lordship over the area. They referring to the cultists, and the blanked out word likely meaning built or created or some other term that implies that this place of worship, or at least where they were involved. He came way before doesn't give us a tremendous range of when the king was created or born or grown or whatever, but we do know that he is very, very old. Everything is fine. This must be Peach reassuring Mario that she's okay after the sacrifice, while the king is pretending to be her without changing her appearance too much. Oh, that look is precious. You'll make it big for sure. This is either the witness or possessed Peach seeing Mario's horrified facial expressions when he's being chased down. What make it big can depend on who's speaking. If it's Peach, making it big could mean a good sacrifice, while if it's the witness, making it big might be the opposite. It could be making it out alive and potentially stopping the king in his tracks, and I'll explain with the final text box in this section. It will be tough, but you will get your second chance. This one had me scratching my head for a while. The second chance likely doesn't refer to Peach because she seems kind of busy being a meat puppet for a god, plus some drama about the ritual I'll explain later. But what about Mario? The words must come from the witness, but the how and why are still up in the air. If he's close enough to the cult to understand how the king works to an extent, why does he want Mario to succeed? Is he somehow aware of the tribulations Mario must go through to get that second chance? Is he somehow aware of Mario going to hell at some point? You're able to escape hell by entering the secret code, so was this what he was referring to? Does he want Mario to use the second chance to somehow impede or defeat the king? Who really is the witness? Maybe he isn't a cultist. He speaks of redemption with so much conviction and certainty that he might be able to see past some kind of time loop shenanigans the king can do on Earth. So maybe he's an angel. There's a lot of biblical references in the story, so is it too far-fetched to suggest that Mario has a guardian angel sent by God to stop this world-ending monster? And what does that mean for who the king is? Mario still went to hell, maybe because he... which might be a sin in the traditional sense, But if he did it because he was aware of a commandment of an angel, then his stay was fated to be temporary, because his mortal body died a martyr, and perhaps he can move on to the spiritual realm to continue the fight against the king. Let's move on to another section. The part where Peach chases Mario through the glitchy area, and when Mario is walking alone in the corridor. Fortunately, we can divide all the dialogue into two neat categories because I believe there are only two characters speaking, Peach and the king. Don't you dare touch my prey. Obviously, the king speaking. He really wants Mario for a sacrifice, or potentially something even greater. The you is a bit ambiguous, either what remains of Peach's mind, or potentially he's aware of the witness's plans somewhat. You bow to me, crook. More king dialogue, demanding to be worshipped. Him calling Mario a crook is interesting. If Mario and Peach are married, would that make Mario the Mushroom Kingdom's king? Perhaps he's jealous of Mario's status, or he's aware of his heroic nature and sees him as natural opposition. Thank you. This one, I think, is Peach, thanking someone for ending all the pain and suffering during her body being taken over. Stay away from. The sentence is cut off, but we all know it's the king demanding someone, either Peach or the witness, to keep their hands off Mario. There is another interesting theory, though, that this is Peach during a rare moment of awareness trying to vie for control so that Mario doesn't fall victim to the king. Is that really me? This one is upsetting. I see this as no one else other than Peach, somehow aware of what her body has become and seeing the actions of the king through her former eyes, tormenting Mario. It has to be a disgusting, horrible fate to see your own body devour people you once cherished because you were spiritually unarmed. What color is your favorite? King dialogue. He's likely asking Peach what color her favorite is, and might be delighted to hear that it may indeed be red, his favorite color. Which would be very funny to consider if this was his breaking point where he decided to take her as his vessel, just because she liked to color. Welcome to my forest. Self-explanatory. The king is feeling proud of his domain and welcomes Mario to try and eat him. My lungs hurt, please take them out. This is Peach, just moments before she was possessed, pleading for an end to the pain, letting herself be taken by the king and his cult. My throat is all closed up. Won't you please cut it open for me? This very graphic line should be belonging to a suffering Peach, and seems a bit sarcastic, like she's taunting the cult to sacrifice her faster. Unless she's already possessed, then the cult would probably love for her to be cut open. I am the true king. The Demon King is quite insecure about anyone else claiming royalty, which might lend us some credence to the theory that Mario and Peach being married. He doesn't call himself a queen or a princess, so he wouldn't be jealous of Peach, but if she's married to Mario, then him being the king would greatly upset him. That's one version of events, but it could go even deeper than that. He might not detest Mario as Lord and King, but instead try and rebuke the name of Jesus Christ the Messiah, who is oft called Lord of Lords and King of Kings. Demons know exactly who Jesus is and detest him for it, because he has dominion over them, and they know they will be cast into the hellfire. Trying to deny Jesus' divinity might be a way to try and corrupt Mario. Let's take a look at the dialogue when you play as Peach. Please help me, I can't stop cutting! Peach has been caught by the trap the king laid and is struggling for control over her own body. Bring me your lungs. A commandment from the king for Peach's lungs to be given to him so that he may feast on the flowering organs. Oh yes, now is the time. Go back and show them who you really are. This one was tricky. It happens after you squash all the enemies, which is being used in this context as representation of Peach's character, like someone who likes to step on others? Or perhaps defile nature in a way by attacking wildlife or something like that. It seems a little too intelligent for the king to say, perhaps. Maybe it's from the witness, who saw the true contents of Peach's soul and let her freely choose to fall. But that theory does assume that Peach is not a very good person, not deserving of redemption. The crop this year was horrendous, except for you. The king says that Peach is the only worthy candidate, presumably for sacrifice and possession. What makes her worthy isn't known, but if it isn't the contents of her soul I mentioned previously, then it might not entirely matter. Whatever it is, it worked. I see you are trying a little bit, but they want all of them. This comes up when you don't stomp on all the enemies. I think this is coming from the witness, who might be coaxing Peach to do so. There's a question of how aware everyone is in this scenario, how aware Peach is of the cult and the king. The last couple dialogue boxes are interesting. I believe this to be the witness speaking to Mario. You built it can only refer to so many things, so perhaps it meant the cabin being built, which had some kind of adverse effect on the island, possibly alerting the cultists to their presence, while the witness chastises Mario. Interesting to note that tried is the last bit of dialogue. Is it cut off from something? Is the full sentence tried again when the game resets itself? Did Mario try and do something afterwards? Tried to stop what was happening? The ending where Mario stares at the pool of blood likely contains a conversation between himself and Peach. The two likely met up after she wandered off and got possessed, but she kept it hidden for now. Mario asks Peach for advice on how the cabin looks, and Peach assures him that he loves red, referring to the king's favorite color. Mario has no idea who the king is by this point, but it serves as a deadly prelude to the game's events. Mario building the cabin is interesting. Someone is speaking to him and guiding him through the process, either the witness or another cultist. Mario is large and the cabin is still being built, so it's likely our first event in the game chronologically. Why the witness would do this is unknown. Maybe for temptation? Was Peach corrupted even further back? I've already spoken about the Ghost Mario dialogue, so we'll skip that. What I can do is start here. Remember the shadow. I'm the heart. If we take that literally, as in Mario is the heart, what does that mean? I believe it means that Mario is the heart the king needs. The king devours organs all the time, so him needing a heart, possibly a pure heart for Mario, might be the last thing stopping him from escaping and enacting his devilish plan, which might be to spread more chaos and have people worship as idols until the Day of Judgment. Speaking of, let's go to hell and see how that looks. Most of the paragraphs given to us are descriptions of the king, almost definitely coming from Mario's internal thoughts. He calls him the dragon, calls him simple-minded, and notes that his horns are larger than his head, which we see in the Pink Forest section. The cat being mentioned is strange. We never see a cat in the game, that I know of at least, so maybe this is extra backstory? The cat seems to warn that the fish were corrupted, taking on some kind of role of someone looking out for him. Could this be the witness in some kind of disguise, or a metaphor? Or it could be just a random cat that knew the vibes were off. I know the Pink Forest might not be entirely canon, but since it's in the game, I want to talk about it. We know it is Peach / the king talking about the organs, but what exactly fell in this context? We don't see anything fall other than Mario. My theory is that Mario, the heart of the king, fell and escaped his grasp and prevented him from reaching his full power, which explains why he must keep chasing Mario. Mario fell, and there's some kind of ambiguous time loop where the king keeps trying to catch him but can't. Maybe Mario falling through the bridge was deliberate, so he could never properly retrieve him, but Mario still damned himself to hell, at least temporarily. Finally, we have the text in the White Void. This seemed to be from the king himself, but what sets me off, and honestly makes me a little uncomfortable, is that he's aware of someone peering into the game itself. Like he's breaking the fourth wall and speaking to us, the player. Maybe he's bluffing, but the king says he didn't need his help, either referring to Mario as the heart, or us, the player. He didn't need us snooping around in the files to escape, but he did anyways. The lines of "for he is you" and others referencing awareness of us can only imply so many things. We can't forget about the infamous date, July 31st, 1992. What could this possibly mean? Now that we have everything, or just about everything, let's start putting everything together. Mario and Peach got married some time ago. While the royal wedding would happen, Mario would be crowned king and Peach would be queen. They decide to retire and move in together somewhere far away, presumably letting a vassal or an heir rule for them. They decide to build a house there, with Mario in charge of the construction. The two get into some kind of alteration, or at least want some space from each other. Mario's building seems to get the attention of someone, or something, which influences him to build it. Peach thinks it's strange that most of the enemies have vanished from the island, but she takes care of the few ones that remain. Little does she know, she's being monitored by a cult, in worship of a primordial, demonic entity known as the God of the Forest, or the King. She's led into the ritual and used as a sacrifice, her body and mind becoming the new vessel for the king. Meanwhile, back at the house, Mario keeps seeing a strange cat that warns him of its own way by taking the fish away he tries to catch. The fish that have become corrupted by the king, whom he still doesn't know about. Peach returns once more and Mario has finished building the house, but her mental state has quickly deteriorated. She exhibits more and more monstrous behavior until Mario begins to take notice, but it might be too late. The king rallies its cult and pursues Mario, trying to use him to become the king's heart, until something goes wrong. Mario falls out of the way. Either he escapes on his own, or the cat, better known as the Witness, a spiritual entity who has been watching him all this time, has bigger plans for him, and he escapes. Remember in the pink forest where Mario falls inside of his own cabin, and recall the smushed Mario corpse. I believe that he died the first time the king failed to obtain him, but Mario came back once either the king or the Witness reversed time. Mario, through a time loop, keeps evading the king, with the eponymous, again, text appearing each time, which I posit to come from the Witness, who continually monitors Mario, and assures him by telling him that despite his troubles, there will be a second chance. An aim for redemption and potentially a way to beat the king. It won't be easy. He'll have to take his own life to escape. He's temporarily stuck in hell, which means that Jesus has come to Earth and all the demons and sinners are cast into the fiery pits. But Mario is alone with his own thoughts. Something may have gone wrong, so based on the otherworldly information, we, the player potentially acting as God, are able to let Mario know there is a way out of hell. By inputting the secret code, there's an escape, but it comes with a cost. The king seems to have found a way out. Time is supposed to have ended, what with the world ending, but the life after death seems to have a place for Mario. But what we're allowed to see ends here, and the game is brought to a close. There's nothing more for us to do. That's how I interpret it, at least. There's no actual official canon explanation for anything that happens, so feel free to make up your own chain of events. Still, how many other games do that? I was able to come up with so much detail based on just text and piecing everything together. I might have some unique interpretations of said text, but so do others. I'm not the only one to come up with a grand sweeping theory on what's actually going on. Someone has to, because this game hasn't been explained, not even almost 8 years after release. I highly recommend you play this game on your own and come up with your own theories down below. There's some stuff I intentionally left out, but there might be things I failed to notice because of how detail-rich the game is. Even if this is all true, and what I've described is accurate even remotely, there are still two big elephants in the room: the king and the July date. Let's start with the king. Demonic, monstrous, primordial. All of these words describe the king to a T. He is simple-minded, ferocious, prideful, and spiteful. He won't accept anything past absolute obedience, and even when you do, he's still got an active date with Doomsday. It's no surprise that he shares many demonic qualities with biblical devils, but what if I told you he has many qualities that actually resemble the devil himself? I really have a devil-focused channel lately, don't I? But he shares more qualities than you'd think, you see. He's something of a tempter, leading people to commit sins in his name. He tries to deny the divinity of Christ. His depiction as a dragon specifically calls back to the Book of Revelations, where he is given the same description. Possession is an extremely common thing for demons to do, and we see that center stage for the main belly of conflict in the story. I would be remiss to mention the specific way of worshipping him. He demands that his domain not be trespassed. He likes to devour human flesh and is very connected to nature. There are just as many signs of him being an ancient pagan god as a modern demon. Consider this. Many beings considered demons or otherwise evil spirits in Abrahamic religions were once beings of worship for other cultures. Take Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies. He was once Baal, a god of the Canaanites. It's a lot more complicated than that, but that's another topic for another day. His forced association and pagan worship rituals remind me a great deal of several Celtic deities who haven't been worshipped in over 1,000 years. Do we truly know the name of this being? If he is the devil, then we know him by Satan. But if he's from an ancient forgotten religion, then perhaps we should call him Kernanos. I have no idea how to actually pronounce that name. No members of that culture are left alive to correct me, so I don't care. That word... He is literally named after the word horn, which fits a description of the dragon pretty well. He's associated with serpents, which should need no explanation to explain that comparison, though understandings of his god is muddled because the only written records of him are in the writings of later Christian scribes, or neo-pagans just making stuff up. So it's tough to separate truth from whatever nonsense Tumblr came up with 10 years ago. His worship is shrouded in mystery and only told us from the biased view of the Christian scribes, but perhaps this was considered by the game's developers. Maybe this character was shaped by the biased understanding these later authors had for older religions, becoming this otherworldly monster the developers could draw inspiration from. Regardless of his true identity, there is one thing that remains consistent. The world has ended because hell has opened up and swallowed people whole. The king, or Satan, or Kernanos, seem to have evaded this fate for now, but if we're still on a biblical through line, his days are still numbered. Revelations 12 verse 9, "And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil, and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him." Mario was able to escape from hell alongside the devil, and mayhap he will be a powerful soldier in the fight against that devil and be the final boot that kicks him down to hell. But there's still one more burning question that hasn't been explained. The date. What is July 31st, 1992? I searched high and low for an answer, but nothing seemed to come up. What if we look deeper? It could mean... It means that the Hey Peter Patreon is officially launched and is ready for action. Get your wallets ready, because even donating as little as $1 a month makes me more money than watching all of my ads. Subscribe and get exclusive videos like the original Darkrai video that was too saucy for YouTube. Get sneak peeks at what videos I'm making next, maybe even early access videos. Untold treasures are ready to be bought on the Patreon, so let me grift and make you more money so I have more funds and time to create even bigger and better videos than ever. Sorry about that, I got something stuck in my throat. Anyways, I don't think July 31st, 1992 has any real significance in the real world, but is rather the date the game's events take place in. It's the day Peach was possessed and the king took over. It was his coronation day. It was the end. I do hope you've enjoyed my analysis of the most disturbing Mario game I've ever played. There are plenty of other creepy Mario games out there, but none quite like this one. This is some inspirational stuff. If I could draw and make music and program and have a work ethic and have some good ideas, I would love to make my own creepy ROM hack, but that's another journey for another day. This has been my favorite episode of Strange Gaming I've ever made. If you've enjoyed this, then this is what I specialize in: strange, weird, and obscure video games. You should stick around if you want more of that. And until next time, have a lovely rest of...
Okay. I think I'm out of the woods for now. What's going on?